Good evening, my friends. Emotional stability is not about never feeling upset, stressed, or frustrated. It's about how quickly and effectively you return to balance. Life will test you. People will challenge you. Situations will push you to the edge. Emotional stability is the anchor that keeps you steady in the storm and the springboard that helps you rise when you're knocked down. Today, we're going to explore 7 principles that will help you build unshakable emotional stability so you can navigate life with clarity, confidence, and purpose. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional stability because you cannot manage what you do not recognize. It's like trying to navigate a ship without a compass. You may keep moving, but you won't know where you're headed or why you keep hitting rough waters. Emotional stability starts with the ability to notice your own patterns, the triggers that set you off, the situations that drain you, the behaviors you default to under stress. Without that awareness, you'll keep reacting on autopilot, repeating the same mistakes, and wondering why certain challenges keep showing up in your life. I once worked with a leader who was technically brilliant, but had a serious problem with how he managed people. His team dreaded coming to him with bad news because his default reaction was explosive anger. The result was that problems were hidden instead of addressed, and morale suffered. When we talked, he initially defended himself by saying, "That's just who I am. I have a short fuse." But that wasn't awareness, that was resignation. Awareness is not just labeling a habit, it's understanding when, why, and how it shows up, and realizing you have the ability to change it. He began tracking his emotional reactions for a month. Every time he felt his temper rising, he noted what triggered it, what he felt physically, what thoughts went through his mind, and how he responded. Patterns began to emerge. He noticed that his anger spiked most often when he felt blindsided or when deadlines were threatened. That awareness allowed him to address the real issues, improving communication and setting clear expectations with his team. Within months, his relationships improved dramatically, and so did the team's performance. Self-awareness is more than recognizing negative patterns. It's also about knowing your strengths, your values, and your needs. When you understand your values, you can make decisions that align with them, reducing the internal conflict that often leads to emotional instability. When you know your strengths, you can lean on them in moments of challenge instead of doubting yourself. When you know your needs, you can take care of them before stress pushes you into burnout or poor decisions. A practical way to build self-awareness is to keep an emotional log for a set period, say 1 week. Each day, write down 3 moments when you felt a strong emotion, whether positive or negative. For each moment, note what happened, what you felt, how you reacted, and what the outcome was. This exercise often reveals patterns you didn't realize existed. Maybe you find that you feel anxious before certain meetings, or that your patience is shorter when you've skipped lunch, or that you feel most energized after collaborating with others. These insights give you the power to anticipate and manage your emotional state instead of being controlled by it. Self-awareness also requires honesty and humility. It's tempting to justify our emotions and reactions, to tell ourselves stories about why we acted the way we did that make us look good. But real growth happens when you're willing to say, "I overreacted," "I was defensive," or "I shut down because I was afraid of failing." That honesty isn't about beating yourself up. It's about giving yourself accurate information so you can change what's not serving you. One of the most underused tools for building self-awareness is feedback from others. The people around you often see patterns you're too close to notice. Asking trusted friends, family members, or colleagues, "When do you see me at my best? When do you see me struggling?" can open your eyes to blind spots. It can be uncomfortable to hear, but discomfort is often the starting point of transformation. Once you begin to develop self-awareness, you gain a crucial advantage: choice. Without awareness, your emotions run the show. You react based on habit, impulse, or outdated patterns. With awareness, you can pause and choose a response that aligns with your values and goals. That's where emotional stability begins, not in eliminating emotion, but in creating space between feeling and action. Think of self-awareness like a mirror. If the mirror is foggy, you can't see what needs attention. If it's clear, you can make adjustments with precision. And the clearer the mirror, the more intentional your actions become. Over time, this awareness becomes second nature. You catch yourself in the moment, rather than after the damage is done. You recognize the early signs of frustration, overwhelm, or defensiveness and take steps to address them before they take control. Your challenge is simple but not easy. Pay attention to yourself as if you were studying someone you wanted to understand deeply. Notice your triggers, your default reactions, the situations that bring out your best, and the ones that push you off balance. Write them down, reflect on them, use them as data to guide your growth. Emotional stability is not built in a single moment. It's the result of consistently choosing to understand yourself and act with intention. The more you know about yourself, the more power you have to manage your emotions, navigate challenges, and stay steady in the storms of life. Separating facts from feelings is a skill that can completely transform your emotional stability because it prevents you from making decisions based on assumptions, distortions, or temporary emotional states. Emotions are powerful, but they are not always accurate. They are influenced by past experiences, insecurities, fears, and even your current physical state. Facts, on the other hand, are objective. They are what actually happened, not what you think happened. When you fail to separate the two, you risk reacting to a story you've told yourself instead of the reality in front of you. I once knew a woman who was convinced that one of her closest friends was avoiding her. She had called and texted several times without a response, and in her mind, the explanation was clear: her friend was upset with her or didn't value the friendship anymore. She felt hurt and rejected. Her emotions were real. She truly felt those things, but they weren't based on confirmed facts. Eventually, she decided to reach out one last time and directly ask if she had done something wrong. That's when she learned her friend's father had been hospitalized, and she had been consumed with caring for her family. The lack of response had nothing to do with anger or rejection. In that moment, the woman realized that she had been reacting to an emotional assumption, not the truth. If she had acted on those feelings, by withdrawing, lashing out, or ending the friendship, she would have damaged a relationship over something that was never real. This is a common trap. We often assume the worst when we feel hurt, ignored, or threatened. If your boss gives you short responses in a meeting, you might conclude they're disappointed in you. If your partner seems distracted, you might assume they're upset. If a coworker doesn't greet you in the hallway, you might think they dislike you. In reality, your boss might just be busy, your partner might be tired, and your coworker might have been lost in thought. Without confirming the facts, your feelings can lead you to false conclusions, which then drive unnecessary conflict, stress, and damage trust. The first step in separating facts from feelings is to slow down when you feel triggered. Instead of immediately reacting, take a moment to identify what you know for sure versus what you're assuming. Facts are verifiable. I sent a message and didn't get a response. Feelings are interpretations. They're ignoring me on purpose. The moment you label something as a feeling rather than a fact, you create space to question it. It also helps to ask clarifying questions before drawing conclusions. This requires humility and courage because it means admitting you might not have the whole picture. Instead of deciding that someone's behavior means something negative, check in with them. Hey, I noticed you seemed quiet in the meeting today. Is everything okay? Often, you'll discover that your emotional interpretation was off, and the reality is far less dramatic than you imagine. Separating facts from feelings also applies to self-criticism. Many people internalize feelings of inadequacy and treat them as facts. I feel like I'm failing, so I must be failing. But feelings of failure are not proof of failure. The fact might be that you missed a deadline or received constructive feedback, but the conclusion that you're incapable or unworthy is an emotional overlay. By distinguishing between the two, you can address the real issue without spiraling into negative self-talk. One practical exercise is to keep a 2-column journal whenever you're upset. In the first column, write down the facts, only what you can objectively verify. In the second column, write down your feelings and interpretations. Seeing them side by side often reveals how much of your emotional response is based on assumption rather than reality. Over time, this habit trains your brain to naturally filter experiences through the fact versus feeling lens before reacting. This doesn't mean you should ignore your feelings. Far from it. Emotions are valuable signals that something matters to you. But they're like warning lights on a dashboard. They tell you to pay attention, not necessarily exactly what's wrong. Separating facts from feelings allows you to investigate the signal and choose a response that fits the truth rather than just the emotional story. When you master this skill, you stop being at the mercy of misunderstandings. You communicate more clearly, you handle conflicts more constructively, and you experience less emotional turbulence. You also gain credibility with others because people can trust that you don't jump to conclusions or overreact. You take the time to understand before you act. Your challenge is to practice this the next time you feel a strong emotional reaction. Before you speak, act, or decide, ask yourself, what are the facts here? What is the story my feelings are telling me? And how can I verify what's true? That pause, that questioning, is the difference between reacting in the heat of emotion and responding from a place of emotional stability. And that difference can save relationships, reduce stress, and help you navigate life with far more clarity and confidence. Mastering the pause is one of the most powerful tools you can use to maintain emotional stability because it creates a critical gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies your ability to choose, to act intentionally rather than impulsively, to protect relationships instead of damaging them, and to preserve your integrity even under pressure. Most emotional damage happens, not because of the feeling itself, but because of the actions taken in the heat of that feeling. Anger, frustration, fear, or even excitement can push you into saying or doing things you later regret. The pause is your safeguard. It buys you time to cool down, think clearly, and respond in a way that aligns with your values and your goals. I once worked with an executive who was known for being decisive and driven, but also for having a short temper. One afternoon, he received an email from a major client that was critical of his team's performance. His immediate instinct was to fire back a strongly worded reply defending his team and pointing out the client's mistakes. But something in him, likely the discomfort of knowing his reaction was fueled by emotion, made him pause. He decided to wait 24 hours before responding. The next day, his anger had cooled enough for him to read the email more objectively. He realized that while the tone was sharp, there were valid concerns that needed to be addressed. He rewrote his response in a way that acknowledged the issues, offered solutions, and reinforced the partnership. Not only did this preserve the relationship, it actually strengthened it. The pause transformed what could have been a conflict into an opportunity for trust building. The pause doesn't have to be 24 hours. It can be as short as a few seconds. Sometimes, simply taking a deep breath before responding in a tense conversation can be enough to shift your reaction from defensive to constructive. The point is to interrupt the automatic chain reaction between feeling and acting. Emotions can be like tidal waves. They surge quickly and feel overwhelming, but they also pass. If you can delay your response until the wave subsides, you'll be in a much better position to choose a response that serves you well. One of the biggest challenges to mastering the pause is the pressure to react immediately. In today's world of instant messaging, rapid-fire emails, and constant notifications, we're conditioned to think we must reply right away. But emotional stability requires the courage to slow down, even if it feels uncomfortable. You might say, "I need a moment to think about that," or "Let me get back to you shortly." These phrases buy you time while signaling respect for the conversation. The pause is also valuable in positive emotional states. Excitement can lead to impulsive commitments or decisions you later regret. How many times have people agreed to big purchases, signed up for new projects, or overcommitted their time because they were caught up in the thrill of the moment? A pause allows you to weigh the long-term implications of saying yes. It turns "I feel like it" into "I've thought about it, and it makes sense." A practical way to build the pause into your life is to set personal rules for high emotion moments. For example, never send an important email while angry, never make a major financial decision on the spot, or never engage in a heated argument without taking a breath and counting to 10. Over time, these rules become habits, and the pause becomes second nature. Another technique is to use a physical cue to trigger the pause. When you notice your heart racing, your voice getting louder, or your body tensing, recognize these as signals that your emotions are high. In that moment, deliberately stop. Step away from the situation if you can, or focus on slowing your breathing. Even small pauses like this can drastically change the outcome of a situation. The benefits of mastering the pause go beyond avoiding regret. It earns you respect. People notice when you handle tense situations with composure. They see that you don't get rattled easily, and they're more likely to trust you with leadership, responsibility, and sensitive matters. It also builds self-respect. You know you can trust yourself to act in alignment with your values, even under pressure. Your challenge is to practice the pause this week. Choose one situation where you would normally react immediately. Whether it's a disagreement, a critical message, or an exciting offer, and delay your response. Use that time to calm your emotions, gather the facts, and decide what outcome you want before you act. You'll find that not only do you avoid unnecessary conflict or regret, but you also build a sense of control that strengthens your emotional stability over time. In that pause lies your power, and the more you master it, the more unshakable you become. Building your resilience bank is about intentionally creating reserves of emotional energy so that when life inevitably throws challenges your way, you have the capacity to handle them without falling apart. Just like a financial bank account, your resilience bank requires regular deposits. You can't keep making withdrawals, dealing with stress, solving problems, managing conflict without putting something back in. When your emotional account is empty, even small setbacks feel overwhelming. But when it's full, you can weather storms, adapt to change, and recover from difficulties much faster. I worked with a teacher who was one of the most composed and positive people I'd ever met. Her school faced constant budget cuts, challenging students, and demanding parents, yet she never seemed to lose her center. When I asked her how she stayed so steady, she told me about her non-negotiable habits. She meditated every morning for 10 minutes, took a brisk walk during lunch, and had a weekly coffee date with a close friend. These weren't luxuries to her. They were deposits into her resilience bank. She explained that during particularly hard weeks, she could feel herself drawing from the reserves she had built up. Without those habits, she believed she would have burned out years earlier. Resilience doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of small, consistent actions that keep you grounded and recharged. These actions look different for everyone. For some, it's exercise. For others, it's journaling, reading, prayer, creative hobbies, or spending time in nature. The key is to identify the activities that genuinely replenish your energy and make them a regular, protected part of your routine. Too many people treat self-care as something they'll get to. They have time. But emotional stability requires you to flip that thinking. Self-care is not optional. It's maintenance. You wouldn't drive your car for years without servicing it and expect it to run well. In the same way, you can't keep operating under stress without maintaining your emotional well-being. One common misconception is that resilience is about being tough and pushing through no matter what. While grit is valuable, real resilience also involves knowing when to step back and recover. If you keep pushing without rest, you eventually hit a breaking point. Think of professional athletes. They don't train at maximum intensity every day. Rest and recovery are part of their training plan because they understand that's how performance is sustained. Your emotional health works the same way. To start building your resilience bank, make a list of activities that restore you. These should be things that leave you feeling calmer, more energized, or more optimistic. Avoid mistaking quick distractions for real replenishment. Binge watching TV or scrolling through social media might give temporary escape, but they rarely refill your emotional reserves. Look for activities that have a lasting impact, ones that actually strengthen your capacity to deal with challenges. Once you've identified these activities, schedule them like appointments. If you wait for free time, it will always get filled with something else. Protect these moments as if they were critical meetings, because in a way they're meetings with your future self, ensuring you have the energy and stability to handle whatever comes next. It's also important to make deposits in your resilience bank during good times, not just when you're struggling. People often only focus on self-care when they're already depleted, but by then, recovery is harder. By maintaining your reserves consistently, you ensure that when a crisis hits, you already have the emotional resources to face it. The impact of a full resilience bank is enormous. When challenges come, you don't feel as blindsided. You can respond rather than react. You have more patience with others and with yourself. You're better able to keep perspective and see solutions instead of only problems. And perhaps most importantly, you bounce back faster from setbacks because you're not starting from a place of exhaustion. Your challenge is to start today. Choose one small habit that replenishes you, something you can commit to daily or weekly, and treat it as a deposit into your resilience bank. It doesn't have to be big. Even 10 minutes of intentional restoration can make a difference. Over time, those deposits compound, just like interest in a financial account, and you'll find yourself stronger, steadier, and more emotionally stable when life inevitably tests you. By building your resilience bank now, you're not just preparing for the storms. You're ensuring you can keep sailing confidently through them. Letting go of what you can't control is one of the most liberating steps you can take toward emotional stability, but it's also one of the hardest. As human beings, we crave certainty. We want to know that things will go according to plan, that people will behave the way we expect, that life will follow the rules we've set in our heads. But the truth is, much of life is outside our control. The weather will change, markets will fluctuate, people will make choices we don't agree with, and unexpected events will disrupt our plans. The more you try to grip tightly to things you can't control, the more exhausted and anxious you become. Emotional stability comes from shifting your focus away from those uncontrollable factors and directing your energy toward the things you can influence. I once worked with a man who spent hours every day stressing over the stock market. He would check the numbers constantly, reacting emotionally to every dip and spike. It consumed his thoughts and spilled into his conversations, affecting his relationships and even his health. When we dug deeper, it became clear that his stress came not from the actual performance of his investments, but from the illusion that if he monitored them closely enough, he could somehow control the outcome. The reality was he couldn't control market fluctuations, but he could control his investment strategy, his spending habits, and his emotional response to uncertainty. Once he shifted his attention to those areas, his stress levels dropped dramatically. He still cared about his investments, but he stopped letting them dictate his emotional state. The first step in letting go is to clearly define what's in your control and what isn't. You can control your thoughts, actions, choices, and habits. You can't control other people's opinions, the past, the future, or random events. When you mentally separate the two, you can stop wasting energy on things that will never bend to your will. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying the weight of responsibility for things that aren't yours to carry. A simple yet powerful exercise is to make two lists, one for things you can control and one for things you can't. Be specific. For example, you can't control whether it rains on the day of your outdoor event, but you can control whether you have a backup plan. You can't control if your coworker is in a bad mood, but you can control how you respond to them. Keep this list visible, and when you feel stress rising, check where the issue falls. If it's in the can't control column, make peace with it and redirect your focus. Letting go also means accepting uncertainty. Life is unpredictable, and that's not always a bad thing. Some of the best opportunities come from unexpected changes. When you cling too tightly to control, you not only increase your stress but also limit your ability to adapt and grow. Emotional stability thrives on adaptability. The more you can roll with change instead of resisting it, the more resilient you become. It's important to recognize that holding on to control often comes from fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. By confronting those fears and reminding yourself that you can handle challenges, even when they're unexpected, you loosen the grip control has over you. You begin to trust yourself more than you trust the illusion of controlling external circumstances. Letting go is not the same as giving up. It's choosing to invest your time, energy, and emotions where they will actually make a difference. It's saying, I will take responsibility for my part, and I will release the rest. This shift not only reduces stress, but also increases your sense of empowerment, because you're no longer fighting battles you can't win. One practical habit to reinforce this mindset is to regularly ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, practice physically releasing it. Write it down and throw it away. Say it out loud to yourself, or take a deep breath and imagine setting it down. Over time, this becomes a natural filter for where you direct your energy. When you master the art of letting go of what you can't control, you free yourself from a constant undercurrent of frustration and disappointment. You create more mental and emotional space for the things that truly matter. Your goals, your relationships, your personal growth. You stop living at the mercy of circumstances and start living in alignment with your values. That's when emotional stability becomes more than a coping skill. It becomes your default way of moving through the world. Reframing the challenge is a skill that can completely change how you experience adversity and is essential for building emotional stability. Life will hand you problems, obstacles, and situations you didn't ask for, but your perception of those challenges determines how much power they have over you. Two people can face the exact same setback, and one will see it as a dead end, while the other sees it as a detour that might lead somewhere even better. The difference lies in the story they tell themselves about what's happening. When you reframe a challenge, you're not pretending it's easy or ignoring the difficulty. You're choosing to look at it through a lens that empowers you rather than one that defeats you. I once met a woman who was laid off from her corporate job after 10 years. At first, she was devastated. She had built her identity around that role and saw the layoff as a personal failure. She could have stayed in that mindset, consumed by anger and self-pity, but she made a conscious decision to reframe the situation. She told herself, this is the push I didn't have the courage to make on my own. Now I have the freedom to explore something new. Within weeks, she started a small consulting business, something she had been dreaming about but always postponed. 2 years later, she was making more money than she had in her corporate job and felt more fulfilled than ever. The layoff hadn't been a blessing in disguise. It became a blessing because she chose to see it that way. The mind naturally focuses on loss when things go wrong, what you no longer have, what you missed out on, what went off track. Reframing forces you to shift that focus to what you can gain, learn, or build because of the challenge. It doesn't mean you deny the hardship. It means you decide the hardship will not be the end of your story. This mental shift changes not only how you feel, but also how you act. When you see a challenge as an opportunity, you're more likely to take constructive action. When you see it as a hopeless situation, you're more likely to shut down. A practical way to reframe is to start asking yourself empowering questions when something goes wrong. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of asking, "Why did I fail?" ask, "What will I do differently next time?" Instead of asking, "What have I lost?" ask, "What does this make possible?" These questions redirect your brain from focusing solely on the problem to exploring solutions and opportunities. Reframing also helps you manage your emotions in the moment. If someone criticizes you, your first reaction might be defensiveness or anger. But if you reframe it as a chance to improve or to better understand how others see you, you shift from emotional reactivity to constructive growth. If a project you worked on gets rejected, you can see it as wasted effort, or you can see it as valuable practice that prepared you for a bigger opportunity. One thing to remember is that reframing doesn't mean sugarcoating. If you've lost something important, it's okay to grieve it. Emotional stability doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from moving through the emotions while still choosing a perspective that serves you. You acknowledge the difficulty and still choose to focus on how you can use it for your growth. Reframing can also be proactive. You don't have to wait for a major setback to practice it. Even in daily frustrations, traffic jams, delayed flights, disagreements, you can reframe in small ways. A traffic jam becomes unexpected time to listen to a podcast. A delayed flight becomes an opportunity to slow down and rest. A disagreement becomes a chance to see another perspective. These small reframes train your brain to find the opportunity in every situation. So when big challenges come, the habit is already in place. The more you practice reframing, the more resilient you become. Challenges stop feeling like walls that block you and start feeling like doors that require you to find the key. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as an active participant in shaping your outcome. That mindset is at the core of emotional stability. You can't always choose what happens, but you can always choose how you interpret it and what you do next. Your challenge is to take one current difficulty in your life and reframe it today. Ask yourself, if this were happening for me instead of to me, what would that mean? How could this make me stronger, wiser, or more prepared? Write down your answers and then act in a way that aligns with that new perspective. You'll be amazed at how a shift in story can create a shift in strength. Choosing responses aligned with your values is the final and perhaps most defining element of emotional stability, because it ensures that no matter the situation or the emotional storm you're in, you remain anchored to what matters most. Values are your internal compass. They represent the principles and beliefs that define who you are at your core. When you respond based on your values instead of your emotions, you protect your integrity, your relationships, and your long-term reputation. You prevent temporary feelings from causing permanent damage. I remember a father who made a commitment to himself years before he even had children. He would never raise his voice at them. His own childhood was filled with yelling, and he knew how unsafe it made him feel. Fast forward to the day when his toddler was having a complete meltdown in the middle of a grocery store. Every eye was on them. His embarrassment was high, and his frustration was building. He wanted to snap. The emotion was raw and immediate. But instead of giving in to that emotional surge, he paused and asked himself, what kind of father do I want to be in this moment? What do I want my child to remember about how I handle their big feelings? He chose calm. He knelt down, spoke softly, and helped his child settle. Later, he told me that in that moment, choosing based on his values, not his feelings, wasn't easy, but it was deeply satisfying. He had stayed true to the kind of person he wanted to be. When you don't have clarity about your values, Your responses are easily hijacked by your emotions. Anger can push you into saying things you regret. Fear can make you back away from something important. Pride can cause you to dig in your heels in an argument just to win, even if it damages trust. But when you know your values, honesty, kindness, courage, respect, responsibility, they act as a filter. Before reacting, you can ask, will this action reflect the person I want to be? Will it honor what I believe in? If the answer is no, you adjust your response. This practice requires self-awareness and intentionality. It means slowing down enough to consider the bigger picture, even in the middle of an emotionally charged moment. This is not easy because emotions demand immediate action. They scream for release. But when you train yourself to check in with your values first, you create a pattern where your best self, not your most reactive self, is the one making decisions. A practical way to do this is to identify your top 3 to 5 values and write them down. Keep them visible, on your phone, in your wallet, at your desk. When you're about to make a decision or respond to a difficult situation, glance at that list and ask yourself which value applies. If your value is respect, does your response show respect for yourself and others? If it's integrity, does your choice match your principles even if no one else is watching? If it's growth, will this response help you grow or will it set you back? One of the most powerful benefits of responding based on values is that it builds trust. People know where you stand. They know you won't lash out one day and apologize the next because your behavior is consistent. They see that you make decisions with thought and principle, even under pressure. That trust extends to yourself as well. You start to feel more confident in your ability to handle life because you know you won't betray your own standards. This doesn't mean you won't feel strong emotions or that you have to suppress them. It means you acknowledge the emotion, but you give your values the final say. For example, if you're angry in a disagreement, your value of honesty might push you to speak up, but your value of kindness will guide you to do it respectfully. If you're afraid to take a risk, your value of courage might help you move forward anyway. Living this way also prevents regret. So often, people look back and think, I can't believe I said that. Or, I wish I had handled that differently. When you choose based on values, even if the outcome isn't perfect, you can look back knowing you acted with integrity. That kind of peace of mind is a huge part of emotional stability. Your challenge is to define your values clearly and start using them as your decision-making filter immediately. The next time you're faced with a heated moment, a difficult choice, or a tempting shortcut, pause and ask, what response here would reflect my values? Then take that path even if it's harder in the moment. Over time, this becomes a habit, and you'll find that your emotional stability deepens. Not because life gets easier, but because your responses become stronger, steadier, and truer to who you are. Thank you, everybody.